Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Pie Before Dinner. This is Dr. Lou, your friendly neighborhood mathematics guru and advocate. And so with that, we'll start our conversation. So Dr. B, you are the director, right, of the Alonzo Crim's Urban Education Center based in Atlanta, Georgia.
UNC Charlotte.
Yeah, I went on to professor at, I was at University of South Carolina for 3 years. And where were you?
I was at UNC Charlotte for doing my postdoc at UNC Charlotte.
But you were interviewing for the science education position, and I was interviewing for the math education position. So I didn't take the job. You didn't take the job, but we both ended up at Georgia State. In fact, in the same department. But yeah, Brian, I've always appreciated how you've approached the work of urban education, the work of working with Black and Brown communities. This was long before we were even in this space. Now we're in this space. And so what I have appreciated is the joy in which you...
That's a great question, Lou, because I think if you go back to my childhood and you look at, Brian Williams as a 7-year-old or a 10-year-old, even a 14, 15-year-old, I would never have described myself as a lover of math and science. It's my belief that everybody has a love of math and science. We love to talk about things like the gap in achievement between Black and Brown children and white children, or we love to talk about these gaps that support the gap.
Listen, Brian, this narrative we're talking about what's interesting for me is how powerful this narrative is in us. What represents an umbrella. But before you get to that, Natalie's saying we need an infographic of this tree. This powerful explanation.
I'd love to take credit for that tree, but there are a lot of people that talk about a root cause. It's called the root cause tree.
Please do me a favor, and if you're listening to this, go ahead and share this. Why don't you start a watch party? You can go to Facebook, and in fact, you can sign up for our show. Sign up for, I'm just putting it on the screen here, facebook.com groups. Everything I've been taught as a math person, as a math educator. You know what helps me, Brian, is that I recognize that I myself am compromised, right? Unlearn some things like who can do math, right? I have to continue to unlearn what is math. But Dr. Hardy, when he talks about racialized trauma, it was the first time that in his professional career, he saw people. I'm a teacher having to go in and teach mathematics and believed I could do math. And that helped me succeed in all my classes. Jaja brings up a point. One of our community members brings up a point.
And an education that definitely oppresses their minds, right? Our children learn very little about the contributions of Black and Brown people to mathematics, and that there is no cultural root for math and science excellence in their communities or in their cultures.
Some people, sometimes you just don't get to the point where you're able to fight the system by understanding that,
absolutely.
So school curricula is not. Let's pivot, right? Let's talk about that. What's that more?
Yeah,
because I see you doing it. I see you doing it online, also known as Brightside, Dr. Brian.
I got to buy that URL now, Lou. You used it now 15 times, man. I got to buy that URL.
I told you this 2 years ago, man. You got to scoop that up.
So, here's the thing, Lou. I think it's funny because I tell my teachers this, and I do want to say this. I think the brilliant. I think that we've got to remember that these are human beings. Mm-hmm. that we are attempting to educate here. I think one of the things that I try to do, so I teach at the Children's Museum of Atlanta. Yeah, so I think that at the end of the day, we got to remember that our children are curious. But what we forget is that what drives people to want to do the science is curiosity.
But I want to go back to something you said. That's the basis of this idea of remembering. The precursor to remembering that children are curious is to understand in your own trauma. So if we accept that, so parents, if you accept, teachers, if you accept, number one, that the science and math you experience in school,
that's not real science. And at the end of the day, that's what scientists do. Scientists are curious people. They ask questions. They observe their world. They ask a question, and they try to figure out how to answer that question. That's science.
What is it that you're joyful about, guys? And put this in the chat for me, please. You put something that you're passionate about, and we'll test Dr. Brian aka Bryside, aka CEO founder of BrianWilliamsScience.com.
And while that's coming in, Lou, while they're sending those in, the other piece about this is what we're doing right now is central to this as well. Is this idea of play? This is play for me, right? You play with mathematics, I play with science. What does that say for our civilization? We can no longer grow food.
I like how you're making that connection. You've done something else, Brian. I know you did this on purpose. You've talked about culture, and you've moved it into the realm of social justice. I don't know if the audience is ready for that piece too.
That's right.
Look, listen. We can pay the bills by saying math has always been used to make decisions about people.
I noticed that you skipped on your responsibility of applying this to math. I just want to note that.
And we see that in a lot of things. And so I could study, the Fibonacci sequence. Guys, thank you. I love this Facebook.
Wow. So here is, okay, so it's interesting. So the first thing that came to my mind was pseudoscience.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it's pseudoscience. It's pseudoscience, right? Oh. There's lots of science in things that we consider kind of beauty treatments and beauty remedies. And
all right, let's put that. BrianWilliamsScience.com. I'll put that on the screen. Brian, that was a good one. I can't find a...
Because here's the thing. I think that so many of our kids are really into music, love music, right? So, one of the things I think about with science is talking to kids about how do you create sound. In fact, the last video that we did over at Brian Williams Science is about how do you create sound. So imagine that a child sitting and creating a musical instrument from their own imagination using the physics of sound. And Lou, I love what you're talking about, because the joy for you and I in both those examples is that they're rooted in some way in who we are as people, in the science, seeing yourself reflected in the mathematics.
Because I almost forgot that I was talking about math when I started talking about the gumbays. These days you can just put in, you can go to, BrianWilliamsScience.com, or you can go to a new site that I'm going to launch tonight for our Facebook group. Our Facebook group doesn't know that, but I'm going to. And so I found a lot of math stuff, a lot of science stuff, but a lot of the stuff looks at, it's just these generic things, and other people's children. You can go to piebefore-dinner.com, talking about how to find the joy. So we've uncovered at least two things, right? One is to recognize where your trauma comes from. And so if you anchor in the piece, then you're never going to get it. Look for the bigger space, right?
Yeah, and I think, while they're putting that in, Lou, for our teachers, find the joy, math in your joy. Hey, I like that, Lou.
Wow.
I like that.
Yo.
Find the science in your joy. I love that. Find the math in your joy.
Steal it from us, but that's awesome. Find the math in your joy, right?
So you can also, once again, center the science and math in their joys. Yeah. So, Brian Stevenson talks about getting proximate, getting close. You got to get close in this work.
Curriculum is not framed around Dr. Yolanda's toddler, right? So many parents are just doing these exciting different things. Listen, parents, if you're doing exciting different things, certainly just keep going and sharing in the chat the kinds of things you're doing that are tapping into your child's joy. Natalie talks about superheroes. My nephew loves him some Batman and Spider-Man. Brian, that's your last test, Brian. Superheroes.
There's a lot of science out there.
Good one, Natalie.
Hey, are there superheroes? Do superheroes exist in our world today? Are there people like Usain Bolt, right? Is he a superhero? Is he superhuman in terms of the way that he runs, right? But how does Jordan do that? What are the mechanics of his skeletal system and his muscles that allow him to jump like he does? Are there superheroes among us? So I think the study of the human body and human anatomy and physiology and how we work, and people that deviate from the norm in terms of how we work, could expose kids to a love of science. Absolutely. That's a good
point. And I think about, so one question I've been watching all these reruns on television, and one has been the World Championships from last year. And my question to myself was, who's the fastest man alive? Is someone who runs the 100 meters faster than the 400 meter runner or the 200 meter runner? And it depends, right? It depends on how we're judging speed. I mean, the running the 100 meters in 10 seconds over 100 meters versus 400 meters, and I'm curious as to how speed dependent is this, and or are there other factors, or are we saying the 100 because the acceleration, it looks different from the acceleration that other athletes might have in other sports? So are we judging it by acceleration alone, or are we judging it the fastest person by something else? And so, that's my math. So I would find a good study to study the rates of speed, the rates of acceleration. Could Batman exist outside of New York, right? I mean, in rural places, like where would you hide? How would you? I have lots of questions. And I'm sure science can help us with that, and STEM can help us with that. Brian, you got me to a place now. You got me to a place. I was trying to wrap it up, but you got me to a place. Make visible the invisible, right? So a rejection of all of those messages. You are destined for greatness. Whoever's listening, you can do math. You can do powerful math. You can do powerful science. Why? Because all throughout history, your people have always done it. Second message we talked about is finding joy again. Locating your joy. What are you passionate about? Let's start there. Forget math, forget science, forget school. What are your children passionate about? That's it. The title's changed. Finding the math and the joy. So look, Brian, you have last words. Why don't you go ahead and take us home with any message you want to leave our audience? They love you so much.
No, I think that this particular setting, this type of opportunity is going to be key for us. I think spaces where we can begin to work collectively are going to be the things that really transform our world. Places where we can share ideas, where we can support each other's passions and support each other's joys. Those are going to be the things that really transform our world. And so we've got to move beyond this idea of, once again, I think I said it last week. And so I think spaces that like you've created here where we can begin to share ideas and work collectively, Lou.
So we want to put tonight's show's resources on there. 3 tips for finding joy, rejecting trauma, finding the joy, and then putting the math in the joy, the science in the joy. We're going to put our 3 tips on piebeforedinner.com, where we eat our pie before our dinner. It's a site, a math pop-up site dedicated to parents and teachers. Please go and give it a check out. But before you go, before you leave this site, please add something in the comments. Give us some love in the comments. You know how this Facebook game goes, folks. Come on. So put some comments in there and share it to your page, to your profile. And the last thing, join our Facebook group, Pie Before Dinner, our Facebook group. We're broadcasting live to that group now. Thank you, Facebook group. I love you guys. Appreciate you guys. Thank you for being so encouraging to each other.